Hello, everybody, and welcome back. We have dual guests for you guys. This might be only the second time in Nutritional Revolution history we've had dual guests, quite possibly. So, super excited to introduce our listeners to Kait Boyle and Kurt Refsnider. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
We are excited. So our listeners heard our intro already. They know how amazing and experienced you guys are in all things biking and racing. So as our listeners know too, we're gonna get into some two truths and a lie and see if those potentially get revealed through the episode today. So let's see, Kait, why don't you break your two truths and a lie down for us first?
Okay, mine are I have been sprayed by a skunk while bikepacking. My bike has been attacked by a fox while bikepacking. And I have survived a polar bear attack.
Okay. 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 Those are impressive. That is okay. Amanda, how should we do this? Do we want Kurt to break down his and we guess it both, or do we want to go one by one?
Yeah.
Okay, go
there.
Yeah, go for it, Kurt.
All right. Let's see. First one is I once did a 100-mile running race just to see how hard it was.
Ooh, okay.
Another one is I got into endurance sports because of an article in Bicycling Magazine.
Okay.
And the third is I once got Kait sprayed in the head by a skunk while bikepacking, which might give one of Kait's away a little bit.
There's a much better one you could have chosen.
Okay. What was this? This potentially was on the journey to Unbound, maybe? I don't know. Okay, these are all excellent, and this is fun that you guys have some maybe tie-in together. Okay, so now I feel like the skunk thing is a real possibility here for both of you guys. I'm kind of leaning towards the polar bear attack as a lie by Kait. Maybe it was like a black bear or something like that. I don't know if you did or maybe you worked at a zoo in a past life. So I'm going with the polar bear, and then Kurt, I'm thinking. I mean, it must have been a really good bike article in Bicycle Magazine if that's what got you into endurance sports. I feel like those can be quite inspiring. 100 miles is a lot to take on, but also you're an endurance athlete, so I feel like it's quite plausible. What do you think, Amanda?
Those ones are hard. I am also conflicted. I'm gonna go with the polar bear attack for Kait, and then I'm gonna say I'm just gonna do eeny, meeny, miny, moe and go with the Bicycling Magazine as the lie. I could see either one of those being true.
Okay, I'm going to follow your lead on that one. We will reveal the answers to the listeners at the end of the episode. But first, maybe why don't you guys break down your story of how did you guys meet?
We met. So I went to Prescott College, and then after graduating from there and working in adventure education for a number of schools, I started teaching at Prescott College in the adventure education program.
Cool.
And during that time, I started bikepacking personally. And right around then, Kurt finished his extended education as a geologist and was hired as earth science faculty at Prescott College.
Cool.
And he had a impressive bikepacking resume at that point and won the Tour Divide and most recently and the Arizona Trail race countless times. And so he proposed a geology through bikepacking course.
Amazing.
At that school, and that school is known for being like a small liberal arts experiential education based program that is structured in a way that allows for a lot of field education. And so the adventure education and environmental studies programs are really psyched on his proposal, and they're like, well, you clearly are qualified to bikepack yourself and teach geology, but how about leading other people in the backcountry? And they needed a co-instructor, and I was the only person who was teaching adventure education there and had experienced bikepacking. And so we were paired to teach this course, and yeah, and that was the beginning.
That sounds
Mhm.
amazing.
First ever bikepacking class at a college level.
Wow.
Yeah. And when that was like 2013,
13.
I guess. So 10, 11
Awesome.
years ago now.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. Has it continued on the course?
We
We
taught
taught
it,
it
yeah, 2 more times after that initial running. And
alternating years. So
yep.
like 15 and 17.
Yeah.
That's great.
And then
Man.
we both left the college. I think Kate did first, and then I did a couple years later,
Yeah.
left my teaching position there. And so unfortunately, the course hasn't been taught since then because it's a kind of unique
Right.
pairing that you need to make something like
Yes.
that happen.
Yeah, no one quite as qualified, I'm sure, to take it on. Wow, I certainly would have signed up for that course, I would have tell you. That would have been so
It
rad.
was really cool.
Yeah, amazing. So recently you both decided to bike from your hometowns in Arizona and Idaho all the way to Emporia, Kansas for Unbound Gravel.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What and for our listeners, Unbound Gravel was what, 2 weekends ago now at this point by the time
Yeah.
we're recording this.
Yeah, like a week and a half.
Hopefully your bodies are feeling recovered. I don't know if you guys biked home or flew home. Maybe you can share that with us. But what made you both decide to take that on and then also take that on together?
I think, well, it was my idea, which is
Mhm.
I'm really glad it worked out because otherwise I'd feel really responsible.
Kate's the idea person on our team, and
Amazing.
Yeah.
some of her ideas are fantastic and some of them are a little outlandish, and occasionally it's a little hard to figure out
Yeah.
how one is going to play out, which end of the spectrum it's going to be on.
Mm.
And this one seemed a little outlandish at first, but she didn't really have much trouble convincing me that it would probably be a entertaining idea.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I think for me, like the idea came about kind of in this side way. Like first it was around Unbound came up as like an opportunity to do a project on a gravel bike. Like we really are a like backcountry mountain bike team, and we're mountain bikers at heart, and like we ride gravel bikes for training. And for me in Idaho, like it's a shoulder season thing when we just have dirt roads to ride. And there's just been this lure around Unbound. Like it's a really big event. It's the biggest gravel race in the world. The industry loves it. Everyone that we know who's raced it loves it. And I've just never understood why, because I've never been there, and I've only seen the media from it. And so I kind of just started to get this feeling of like, I just want to see what all the hype is about. And the XL is a logical race to do for us because it's self-supported. It's a long distance. Really the self-supported element of it is huge as far as it being different from the other races there and more up our alley with our backgrounds in racing.
Yeah.
And for me, that was a distance that I technically retired from after after some traumatic injuries and not having success at that distance again, and thinking that I wasn't really capable of it anymore. And so when I started to want to do the XL, and I knew that that was a big gamble competition wise and distance wise, and it's a hard time of year to be ready living in a snowy climate. I just kind of was like, well, what if I ride there? Like if I ride there, I'll get plenty of training, maybe too much.
Yeah.
And there'll be this adventure around getting to the race that doesn't really hinge on the success of the race. And I knew that I would, one, have the opportunity to either feel really confident going into the race or not able to race because I would had not had a good outcome from bikepacking there. But and also that it's something that we can do pretty, not necessarily easy, but it's comfortable for us to go on a long bikepacking trip. And so it's this story that we can bring to Unbound that's unique. And our sponsors would be really excited about it. And I know that we could inspire some people and reach people in a different way than if we were to fly to Unbound and have the best possible competitive races that we can, which is there's certainly value to that. And I think that for me with Unbound, it was like there's so much unknowns. Like it was my 4th gravel race ever.
Wow.
So there are all these things, between the uncertainty of the distance, the gravel racing element of it, and just the curiosity around the event and the landscape. Like, being mountain bikers, we generally prefer mountains.
Right, right.
And Kansas isn't known for their mountains. But I really thought, like, I know people love the Flint Hills and say they're beautiful. And I was just like, well, it's a cool opportunity to connect like the Intermountain West, which Arizona and Idaho both are, with the plains, and like to experience the whole landscape in a connected way. And
Hmm.
I knew from past trips that we've done together with that cover huge swaths of landscape, like how much more you appreciate somewhere when you pedal through it, and the
Yeah.
people that you connect
Hmm.
with. Like, it's easy in the US to have ideas of what people in different places are like. And I think I've always been just amazed by how people are when you meet them on a bike.
Hmm.
Amazing. And Kurt, Kate reached out and ran this idea behind you. And how long did it take before you were on board?
I don't know, a few days probably,
Yeah.
not long. Like I'm a sucker for long bike trips. Like I
Mm,
spent 3 months last year riding the Continental Divide
wow.
hiking trail across the country and finished that and was like, huh, cool. I'm physically really tired, but that was fun. I could keep going right now
Amazing.
if my body had more energy. Like my head was stoked for it. And so
Yes.
long trips are always something I love doing. And riding from home or like riding to home or riding from home on long trips is a really powerful experience for me. And
Yeah.
so literally like riding out my driveway and turning right and riding to town and then continuing on, like that's just such a neat experience to have.
Yeah.
And so that was one that I was really excited for. And then it was also an opportunity to retrace some of a route that actually Kate and I bike packed like 5 years ago, across northeastern Arizona, across Navajo Nation. That was a really powerful experience the first time we did it. And so this was a neat opportunity to just kind of repeat that in a little bit different
Amazing.
context. So I was excited
Yes.
for that too.
Wow. So you said Kate was kind of was it the idea, or it was Kate the planner too with all of this?
She's the idea person,
Plan is a
usually.
loose term.
And
I should say, I should actually really point out this because I still am amazed by this. It wasn't until like many months after we had committed and like told our sponsors and like fully were all in that I looked at a map at where Emporia was in
like, oh, it's on the
Kansas.
east side of Kansas, not the west
And
side
I
of
was like, oh
Kansas.
my God, we have to go all the way across Kansas, not just to Kansas.
Yeah. Oh man. So yeah, how did you guys determine to map that out, and what were you trying to stay primarily on road? Like how were you guys mapping this?
Yeah, so my route was a little bit easier to figure out than Kate's because Kate was dealing with like May trying to cross the Rocky Mountains and they're still super
Right.
snowy up high. And coming across kind of Arizona and then Colorado, I was able to link up a lot of stuff that stayed lower down.
Hmm.
So my goal with the route I put together was as much dirt as possible.
Yeah.
And, not trails or single track or anything, just like dirt roads, gravel roads, as much of that
Awesome.
as we could link together. And it was like my route was stunning. Like it was
Wow.
probably 80% dirt the whole way, and only real extended stretches of pavement were like getting in and out of towns,
Amazing.
or over a couple passes in Colorado that were still snowy.
Wow.
And then Kate, you can share a little bit about your route through windy Wyoming.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, I made my route initially well before the time to ride was upon us, and kind of with an optimistic lens of maybe what spring would look like here with snow melting.
Mm.
And it proved to snow up until like 3 days before I left home. And so I had to recreate my route the week before I left, just because both in Wyoming and Colorado, things just weren't melting at the rate that they have in some years. And so I ended up just taking a lot more pavement and kind of working through lower terrain, which ended up working out. And there were some on the go adjustments as well. But yeah, it was a beautiful route, and I was mostly on quiet roads, and
That's nice.
it was definitely more paved than Kurt's to get to the Front Range, but yeah, it was really beautiful.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And what was total mileage for each of you guys?
Mine was like a little over 1,400
Wow.
miles, I think.
Mine was like around 1250.
Wow.
Yeah,
And do you guys know your elevation or like total vert through that journey?
that's a good question.
I don't actually know.
Yeah, I don't either,
Man,
but
wow.
yeah, we'll find out.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. And so how long did you plan to give yourselves to your guys' meeting point, and where was that in relation to the race day at Unbound?
I think we were both a little optimistic with how long it would take us to get to where we were
Yeah.
meeting. I think I should have left like a day or two earlier, and then had a mechanical issue on the second day that
Oh,
was
shoot.
just something that I should have dealt with before I left, and was like, "Ooh, it's not that important. I'll just let it be." And then the
Oh,
second morning it
no.
just flared up, and so I had to deal with that. So that
Yeah.
like lost half a day right off the bat, and then was behind
Mm.
schedule like right from day two. And then neither of us really allowed for any, you know, extra day or two in case something went wrong or had bad weather or anything like that. And so
Mhm.
I was kind of pushing full days from, I don't know, like 7:30 in the morning to 7
Wow.
or 8 at night every day to just like regain, like get back on my itinerary that I thought I needed to be on.
Yeah.
Uh,
Wow. And what
Yeah.
about you, Kate?
I think I had a little bit more of a relaxed schedule, in part because the terrain was also pretty quick. And I conveniently ended up with just tailwinds for the first half, which
I
was
had
really
Wow.
mostly
helpful.
headwinds for the first half.
Oh no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and my husband, when he heard my itinerary, which at first was leaving on a Tuesday, he was like, "You should give yourself more time." He's like, "There's no reason why you shouldn't leave earlier." And so I actually ended up leaving on a Sunday instead of a Tuesday.
Mm.
And so I was able to actually ride up until I met up with Kurt. Like I'd put in two really big days, like 120 to 140 miles, and then I'd ride 80 miles, which would go really quickly. And then
Yeah.
I'd have a couple of bigger days. And so I think in that way, I wasn't quite as worked as Kurt was because I didn't
Mm.
have full days the entire week
Mhm.
that I was solo.
Wow.
But then we definitely left Colorado Springs with um I forget how, maybe like 650 miles, and we
Mhm.
had to be there by Saturday to have the amount of time, 5 days to recover before the race.
Okay.
And so if we were to like back off our itinerary to have any easier days, then suddenly we'd be eating into our days off and
Mhm.
recovering. And we've definitely, I think, both dug maybe a little bit deeper. Like I think that if we had arrived in Emporia earlier or had just like a little bit less total riding time across the plains,
Mhm.
we probably would have been a little fresher.
Mhm.
But
Wow.
Yep.
live and learn.
Yeah, goodness. So did you guys end up making it there on Saturday, the Saturday before the race? Wow.
Mhm. Yeah.
Goodness. Um, so all in all, how many days did it take you from leaving your house to get to Unbound?
For me, it was 14, and we had 1 day off in that. So it was 13 days of riding for me.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think I had what 2 days more than that.
Mhm.
Wow. Yeah, goodness. Okay, so we of course have to talk about nutrition. So,
Yeah.
what was your guys' thought process around the nutrition planning for the trip? Certainly you're not going to carry all your nutrition on you for that distance, but did you start off with some kind of like go-to favorites from your hometown, or how did you kind of route out where you're going to stop for refills?
Yeah, so my mind was very much on the long trip I did last year, and
Mm,
I had started that one out for the first like month, basically had not had enough, like planned my daily calorie intake too low for what I actually
oh
needed,
shoot. Yeah.
and really kind of fell behind on energy and had to kind of adapt along the way. And so on this trip, I was definitely, my mind was like, I need to get enough calories, I need to get enough protein, because the consequences for this, if I fall behind, like if I am not getting enough for
Mhm.
the ride there, that's gonna have a big impact on how I actually feel come race day.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to err on the side of like having too much food, too many calories. And so I left home with like, I think 4 days of meals, like
Mm,
breakfast and dinners,
mhm.
that were all pretty sizable, like 800-calorie breakfasts and
Nice.
thousand, actually probably like 1100-calorie dinners with a lot of protein,
Awesome.
and packed a lot of trail butter, nut butter for
Yeah.
more protein snacks during the day, and then goo recovery drink mix for every evening at the end of the
Nice.
day. And then I mailed a box also to Farmington with
Mm,
another like 3 days of those same things, just
great.
so I could at least have good meals. And I also knew from riding through a lot of that stretch across Navajo Nation. I mean, unfortunately, it's really a food desert out there that
Yeah.
like the little tiny communities have a gas station convenience store,
Mhm.
and that's it
Wow.
for getting food. And so
Yeah.
basically, I got snacks along the way, and if I got lucky, there'd be an elder in town selling burritos along the road, and I could pick up a couple burritos
Nice.
for the next day. But
Wow.
that was the plan for the first half, and then the second half, there were many more actual like little grocery stores or markets along the way, and I could get better quality food and like
Nice.
meal type stuff along the
Yeah.
way. So really, it was a big focus on making sure I had a lot of calories and a lot of protein.
Yes. And those 1,100 calorie dinners, is that like a backpacking food?
Yeah, so those were freeze-dried meals.
Nice.
What Peak Refuel, I think is the name of the company out of
Okay.
Salt Lake City, and that's what I used a bunch of last summer.
Amazing.
And I mean, some of them come with that much, like 1,100 calories, and I forget what, some of them have like 40 grams of protein in them. And then
Mm,
oftentimes I'd add a little bit like mashed potato flakes or freeze-dried chicken to them to like
nice.
bulk them up a little bit more
Yeah.
yet.
Awesome. And what was your caloric target you were shooting for daily,
I think it
roughly?
was around like 5,000,
Wow.
5,500 calories.
Yeah.
And I was looking um, at some of my just ride data from out there, and I was burning between 4,500 and 6,000 calories a day
Oh,
just from the
wow.
work done riding. So
Oh
that,
my goodness.
and then by just basal
Yeah.
metabolism, metabolic needs on top of that. So probably
Right.
like 7,500 calories a day minimum.
Yes.
So
Wow.
definitely wasn't able
Goodness.
to replace all that, but most of it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's impressive. And what about you, Kate? What was your game plan from the start?
I didn't leave with as much because my route wasn't quite as remote with riding through Wyoming. Like, I mean, it is remote, but I was able, I think, probably just like covering more ground and had more like established towns going through.
Yeah.
So the first, and just even having like one town a day is plenty,
Yeah.
especially with capacity on a gravel bike. So I left
Mhm.
home with like a box of Annie's mac and cheese, some oatmeal packets, nut butter to go with it. And the main thing, and really just enough food to get me to that first resupply, knowing that
Mhm.
I would have like a grocery store to resupply in. The second day and the third day
Mm.
and the fourth day, like pretty
Nice.
regularly.
Yeah. Oh, that's
And
great.
then the main thing I did carry more of were just like I started with the Goo Octane recovery drink mix that I use,
Mhm.
knowing that I just really wanted to make sure that I was having that for a few days. And then I switched to just buying chocolate milk whenever I could. Often too, I'd have like a post-ride chocolate milk and then a dessert chocolate milk, like pre-bed chocolate milk or
Yes.
yogurt. I'd
Yeah.
also get just like Greek yogurt as that because it was like cool enough and
Mhm.
I had the capacity and I wasn't trying to go anywhere fast. And so I was like
Yeah.
unfazed by carrying the weight of those things for a little while to camp.
One of the
Um,
last days of the ride in Kansas, we went through a town with a grocery store kind of late in the day, and Kate left the grocery store with, I think, 2 things of yogurt and 4 drinks stuffed into her
Gotta
panniers.
rehydrate.
yeah. Yeah, it was ridiculous. At that
That's
point, I was
great.
just tired of resupply. I was like, I just want beverages.
Yes.
Um,
Wow.
but and then the main thing that I left with enough for home that's related to nutrition was like I brought enough collagen and glutamine powder to get me through the entire trip to
Wow.
Kansas
Mhm.
and some of the supplements that I use that I attribute to recovery, like
Nice.
BCAAs and
Yeah.
um yeah, those sorts of things.
And the glutamine and collagen, are you utilizing that for like joint and tendon health? Are you doing that for gut health?
So glutamine in the morning, on an empty stomach for gut health, and then collagen also in the morning for joint health.
Awesome. Great.
Yeah,
And how,
I'm sure, yeah, they have other benefits, but that's what I
yes,
use it for.
amazing.
The bulk.
And how
Yeah.
did both of your guys' GIs feel with that food volume? Did you ever run into any issues like lack of desire to eat or flavor fatigue or anything like that?
Um, I mean, I think that like I think I can't speak to Kurt. I went into it feeling pretty good on like my gut being trained for eating honestly even more than I needed to while bikepacking. Like I had just done a 9.5 hour race prior to that where I was racing on 90 grams of carbs an hour. And when I'm bikepacking, like more like 50 is probably what I'm doing with other like in real food. So with more fat,
Right.
more protein.
Mm-hmm.
And so my gut was pretty content with the consumption of it all. I found myself, and I attributed this more to a like response to the volume, but my appetite was pretty suppressed at night for maybe the first week, and like I just wasn't very hungry, or it didn't take very long for me to feel full. And so it was just like really needing to make sure that I was eating based off of what I know I need versus what I was wanting. So
Right.
and but
Yeah.
I didn't have any trouble actually eating it. It was more just like the desire
Yep.
thing.
Yeah. What about you, Kurt? Any GI?
Mine was fine for the first, I don't know, 2/3 of the ride. Most of the food I was carrying and using and eating and the volume of that was what I'm pretty accustomed to. And then something went wrong in Kansas, and I don't know if it was something I ate in Colorado Springs, but had a couple days where my gut was really unhappy.
Oh, shoot.
And then after one of those days, it just like like 2/3 of the way through the day, my energy just tanked, and I had nothing left for the last, I don't know, what, 40 miles, 50 miles of the
Yeah.
day. But then the next morning it was way better and recovered pretty quickly after that. So I don't think
Nice.
it was my diet choice. I think it was just something that
Yeah.
probably shouldn't have eaten, or something I wasn't prepared right
Shoot.
when I was
Yes.
actually in town.
Yeah. 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 Certainly that can be a situation that we can run into, right? When we're stopping at all these random places and eating stuff maybe we're not used to.
Yeah.
Talking about kind of planning the route in the grocery stores for you, Kate, were you planning to hit those stores at the end of your long days of riding, or did it matter, when you hit those spots to restock?
They were kind of scattered. There wasn't a strategy. It was more just like I had an idea of where I wanted to get each night based on camping because again of having snow. My dog is hunting flies right next to me.
Oh.
But because of snow up high, my camping, I couldn't really stop anywhere I wanted to. I had to be trying to camp lower in elevation. And so then the resupplies were just based on when I was going through that town in order to get to the place. So in some cases, I was going through town in the middle of the day and would resupply for that night, and then to get to the next town probably sometime the next day. And then on some occasions, I was staying in the town that I was also resupplying in which case it was just really easy to get food
Nice.
for the next day. And then I would go get a meal somewhere because meals are generally a lot easier to
Yeah, that's
catch
great.
up on calories and protein and things like that.
Awesome. And what about your guys' water? How many ounces or milliliters, depending on liters, your preference? How many were you carrying on you like daily? And did you have to restock daily or?
It's a good question. It varies for me tremendously based on like kind of what sort of climate I was in. Like when I was in the mountains, there's water flowing everywhere and it was a lot cooler. And so I was able to carry just like a couple bottles at a time and then stop and just like dunk in a stream and filter
Oh, nice. Yeah.
some water out of that. In northeastern Arizona, like across the Painted Desert, I was kind of at full capacity, usually like pass a water source and get, what ended up being 3, 4, like 5 liters of water. And
Wow.
then that would be enough for most of the day. And I
Yeah.
just need to, in the evening, hopefully find somewhere else to get water for overnight and for the next morning.
Yeah.
And then Kansas, I don't think we didn't have any super hot weather there. It was warm, but I don't think I was ever carrying more than like probably 3 liters at a time. And
Wow.
that would last for, I don't know, 7 hours, something like
Okay.
that.
Yeah, that's great. What about you, Kate?
Yes, similarly, like generally quite a bit of water from here to the Front Range. Some stretches in Wyoming were a little long, but they went by really fast. And so I don't think I was ever really carrying more than 2 or 3 liters. I dry camped one night, and there was a little bit of uncertainty of if there was going to be water in those creeks that I was crossing, but pretty quickly it was evident that there would be because I mean snow's melting, so
Yeah.
everything was flowing. And so yeah, that stretch I think I left it was evening and I had maybe 10 more miles to camp. So I left close to full capacity because then there wouldn't be water until the next town. So I think I had like
Wow.
5 liters to get 10 miles to camp. And then by the time I left camp, I had not nearly as much.
Wow.
But
And
yeah.
oh, and what are you guys using for water filtration? What devices are you carrying?
We were using the Hydro Pack bladders with the Be Free, the Catadine Be Free filters.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. That's
And
great.
I carried Aquamira tablets just in case we came across anything that was like extra silty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's great. We will link that in the show notes for the listeners for sure. So I want to be mindful of your time too, because we still have to talk about Unbound. So now you guys get to Kansas, you have some days to rest and recover, and then you both signed up for the 350-mile gravel race, the longest one that Unbound offers. And unsupported. Having come off of 10, 14 days of biking across several states, how are you guys feeling the day before the race?
I felt good. My confidence wasn't super high in just like what my body would have in it when it was time to actually push hard.
Yeah.
And I hadn't done, between riding to Unbound, the kind of tapering before I started the ride to just like back off training and start the commute to Unbound fresh, and then the recovery afterward, I hadn't done any like high intensity training in over 4 weeks. And so Unbound, even the XL starts off like a road race at a super high pace for the first, and I don't know, 4 or 5 hours before things start to like settle out and break up, and everybody kind of drops into their own much more sustainable pace. And so I was really nervous about that, but my body felt surprisingly good. So, I had that optimism that like recovery, I tend to recover fairly quickly, it seems. And so, and I ate a lot. Like I felt like I ate a ton in those 5 days. And so like I
He
knew
did.
that
He ate for like 2 at least.
Carb
A
loading,
mother
right?
with twins.
Yeah.
That's great. And how about you, Kate? Did you feel like you were able to recover a little bit before race day?
Yeah, I felt better each day. I felt the best that I had felt since early in my bikepacking trip. And I remember there was a day, the race started on a Friday, and on Wednesday, Kurt and I went and rode for 2 hours to try to like open up our legs and shake them out a bit. And it was like, oh yeah, I feel okay.
Yeah.
And then we got off our bikes and I walked down the stairs and I'm like, oh my God, my quads are really sore.
Yep.
This is really not a good thing.
Oh no.
And so I think that was just a good reality check of being like, okay, well, we're doing the best we can. Like we slept a lot, we ate a lot, we got body work, it was pretty relaxing as far as getting ready and go. And yeah, and so just went into the day before the race being like, well, just gonna do our best.
Yeah, and we also went into this whole adventure knowing that we wouldn't be fresh going into the race, that the ride, that like the commute there would help in certain ways, but it probably would not leave us as strong or as quite as capable as had we not done that.
The top end.
Yeah. So we knew that was going to be the case.
Yeah. And with something like Unbound XL, what did you guys have like a guesstimated finish time that you were shooting for, or was just like get out there and see how you feel, or what was your approach or thought on that?
I had kind of, the course went to the north, which it has done in the past, but it was different than it has gone to north. So like there were past times that you could like loosely compare it to, and not knowing those roads, it was like, well, I don't know if this is like faster riding or slower riding than that other northern course. And then the conditions vary wildly. And so we, going into the race, like we were really expecting it to be muddy because it was forecasted to rain multiple inches the night before our race. And so we were expecting to have a slow course because of a wet first day. And so we kind of had these like possible times on a dry course, and then thinking it'd be slower because of a wet course. And then it wasn't wet. It was actually really lovely and fast. And actually it was quite cool for us. So we didn't even have like heat to deal with. And so I had at least this idea of like, well, if things are going well, then this is what a fast time would be. And then going from there, what slowing it down would look like.
Yeah.
Nice.
But I really had no idea how long it would take if we were like pushing our bikes for miles on end, as
Yeah.
sometimes they do.
Yeah, and I had kind of like a sub 24-hour time as a goal for me. Like the former course record in the North was like 23
Mm.
hours or so. And so I kind of built my whole nutrition plan around about a 24-hour finish.
Wow.
And the nice thing with that kind of a race is that you don't have to carry your nutrition for the entire thing. Like
Mhm.
there are gas stations along the way that you can resupply at. Like I think we had maybe 5 total, and we hit 4 of those while they were open, like during open hours. And so if you're falling behind your plan, then it's easy to like adjust on the
Mhm.
fly. And if you're actually
Right.
moving faster, again, you can adjust and just not get as much if you
Amazing.
already have some of what you need. So
Yeah.
that was my goal.
Mhm.
Awesome. I have to ask you guys, coming from a mountain bike background and all the talk about the unbound terrain,
Mhm.
what was your honest opinion when you got out there on a gravel bike?
As a mountain biker, it's not very hard, but it's
Okay,
really
thank
nice to be
you.
a mountain biker.
Thank you.
Like it's
Yeah.
one of those things, and it makes it fun. Like
Yeah.
I was really psyched with the terrain because it kept it engaging. Like the
Mhm.
roads change a lot. The bedrock and loose, chunkier stuff that people talk about as being the technical part, like it's really fun. Like it makes it
Yeah.
feel like, oh, cool. We're like
Yes.
we're paying attention to what's in front of us.
Yeah.
And it's also like for me, what made getting fourth rather than fifth like more straightforward because I was able to just ride away on a section that was
Wow.
rockier. And I think for anyone who like is really comfortable on loose rocks and chunky stuff as like
Yeah.
especially the Arizona, like I learned to ride in Arizona and so it was like pretty similar in some ways to
Yeah.
that, like limestone.
Mm-hmm.
But it was also really interesting just to be there and look around like, oh yeah, like if you have a road background, like this is actually really hard for
Yeah.
like
Yeah. And I think those are a lot of the people that end up slicing their tires and puncturing is because they
Yes.
struggle a little bit more with line choice. And
Mhm.
some of them are much more tentative and some just like blasts. It was impressive seeing what some riders were just blasting through. It's like, oh, that's
Yeah.
not going to end well. And then, I
Yeah.
mean, one of the guys I rode with for a lot of the race, that's how he was. He was
Mm.
super fast in the descents, but he didn't pick lines. He just like charged down them. And I was like, you are going to explode your bike at some point.
Yeah.
He never did. Like it worked out great for
Oh,
him.
wow.
But
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Did you guys have any punctures or any issues? That's amazing. Yeah.
no, yeah,
I
I
think
feel both
I feel
lucky
like
and psyched.
yeah.
yeah, I feel like there's a part to that coming from a mountain bike background too, where you know how to like manage the suspension, right? Or like your own body
Mhm.
suspension.
Yeah.
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 Just like riding lightly.
Yep.
Yes, yeah. And I remember I did a skills clinic, and like the girls kept saying, "Absorb, absorb with your
Yeah.
elbows." You know, it's like,
Right.
yeah, you're like absorbing the bump.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I think that's great. So with the unsupported, you mentioned kind of choosing and pointing out these like gas stations or convenience stores where you can top off on nutrition fluids. When you get to those, have you pre-scouted those? Because I've heard some people talking about pre-scouting the store, so you're not like in there hungry and tired and like wandering the aisles, or are you like, I know where the bars are, the chocolate milk is, is it like that, or is it more kind of meandering and seeing what you're in the mood for?
Well, because we were there without a car, we weren't really scouting anything.
Right.
Like a friend gave us a ride out to one of the first technical sections of road,
Mhm.
or let us borrow her car so that we could just like ride a section just to see what it was like, which was like
Yeah.
really helpful because we were like, oh,
Mhm.
okay, this is
This is
great.
fine.
Yeah.
We'll look forward to this.
Yes.
But we weren't able, like 350 miles is a huge distance to like even drive it the week ahead of time.
Right.
And so we had like gas stations are kind of gas stations, and so we
Mhm.
had an idea of like what options would be. Like every gas station has Gatorade and every gas station has Oreos. And so I also know that like I know what works for my gut. I know what is really easy for me to like consume 80 grams of carbs an hour. And I also know that I'm like pretty picky when it comes to like junk food. And so had a plan to start with quite a bit of my own nutrition. Like I think I always started with enough for like the first half, and then I had some drink mix to go into supplementing with the gas stations, and then it was like the last 6 hours or so, or 8 hours, that was fully off the gas station. And I made myself a list of like ideas. Like,
Nice.
cool. So if I'm in a gas station, like, and I had a plan, like, once I'm out of Roctane, I'll get Gatorade. And I knew how much I needed for that. And then based on how many grams of carbs are in Gatorade, I knew how much I needed to buy in food if equated to like snacks that are like
Yeah.
roughly like 25 or 30 grams of carbs per
Mhm.
snack. And so I just had this little list of ideas. I was like, I can get pretzels, Oreos, peanut butter crackers, gummies, bananas, things like, yeah. I forget
Perfect.
maybe what else. And then
Yeah.
optimistically, like a sandwich, but they didn't really have any that were up to my
Right.
standards.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, so that's what I did. And I just had like a list of like how much I needed, and then of these types of things, what speaks to me.
Yeah.
Big bars were on that list.
That's
Yeah.
great.
And I was trying to avoid any corn syrup, especially high fructose corn syrup, and it's pretty hard to do that.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. Do you avoid that for the purposes of GI distress, or?
I avoid that because my nutritionist told me to, and it's
Okay.
worked out for me.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Certainly the fructose can be a little bit more GI upsetting for some people.
Yeah.
What were your go-tos at the convenience stores, Kurt?
Oh man, so I've been resupplying out of gas stations and races for like, God, almost 15, yeah, 15 years now. And so it's pretty easy for me to walk in and just know what the options are going to be. And it's more a question of like, what sounds good right now.
Yeah.
And those will be very different things, whether it's
Mhm.
like afternoon heat or cool
Mhm.
nighttime riding temperatures, things like that.
Yeah.
But I think like Kate, I started out with nutrition for about half the ride,
Wow.
and a lot of goo octane drink mix, which I think ultimately like about half my calories came from drink mix and gels in the first like 4 hours
Wow.
or so, and then most of the rest of it was like solid foods
Wow.
that I got at gas stations, which was usually a mix of cookies. Occasionally, one of the gas stations I found those they're like peanut butter I don't know, like peanut butter bars with thick chocolate icing on top. I don't know what they're actually
Ooh.
called. They're so
Yeah.
good. And so I was really excited to see those sitting on the counter. So I grabbed two of those, which was probably like, I don't even know how many calories. It was a ton,
Yeah.
and a lot of high fructose corn syrup probably
Oh,
in
shoot.
that. But
Yeah.
yeah, cookies, a few candy bars at each one, and then Gatorade. And I've never actually amazingly, I've never done this before in races that I can recall. But at a few of the gas stations, I bought 2 cans of Coke and would just pour them both in a water bottle
Oh, yeah.
and drink that in the
Yeah.
next like hour after that. And it, for some reason, tasted so good,
Yeah.
even in the like middle of the night.
Wow.
And so that was about it. I didn't end up buying a ton of gas stations. The big disappointment was that everyone always raves about the Casey's general
Mm.
stores along the route and like
Hmm.
the selection they have and how good their pizza is. And we stopped at like two, I think, on our ride to Unbound, and
Oh.
we're kind of blown away by some of the like the real juice options, and
Oh,
they
nice.
have more like good quality food in them.
Yeah.
And then when we looked in detail at the race resupply options, there's one Casey's en route. And then like the
Oh.
day before the race, they're like, "Oh, we're rerouting around that town because of some parade,
Oh,
so
shoot.
you
A
don't get the
rodeo parade.
Casey's." So we got
Yeah.
no Casey's the whole time.
Oh,
But yeah,
man.
there was
Shoot.
pizza at the aid station they made in exchange. So I was
Oh,
psyched I got some pizza.
nice.
But
Nice.
yeah, I feel like following your, like, knowing what you need, but following your gut with
Yeah.
what you want is so huge. Like forcing
Yeah.
yourself to eat something because you think it's the right thing is rough in
It
those,
never ends
especially the
well.
second half of
Yeah.
those ultras. So like there are a lot of conditions I would never eat pretzels, but because it wasn't hot, I was like, oh,
Yeah.
this is great. I
Yeah.
apparently I want something that's bland and salty.
Yeah.
And so I was
Yeah.
just like eating pretzels for like 4 hours.
Oh, that's great.
So
Those are,
yeah.
yeah, those are all like great options to like suggestions to for the
Yep.
listeners, I'm sure. So so how did you guys each perform overall? What was total race duration? How'd you guys place?
Yeah, my story was it's a really great lesson and reminder in the power of just patience in ultras. and how things can turn around, because I pretty quickly felt horrible. Like I had
Shoot.
first like, cool, I'm gonna stay on the Peloton. I'm gonna like try to have a good position in this. And then it was like basically I just blew up instantly. And I was like, apparently I can't. Like
It
I
wasn't
will not be
instant. It was like
staying with anyone.
30 miles in.
Oh man, yeah.
23.
Oh,
And
no.
and then I promptly just moved backwards, like through the
Oh.
field. And I've always raced ultras really steadily moving forward through the field as time goes
Mm.
on. And so it was like pretty demoralizing to be going backwards.
Mm.
And the whole first period of daylight all the way through sunset, I just felt pretty terrible and was just working on eating and drinking and being like, well, I know I can ride this and I'm here to finish this. And so that's what I'm gonna do. And I'm gonna
Yeah.
ride through the night with this goal of just finishing and let go of any expectations of results, and as like was just getting passed by women. And then at some point early in the morning, the second day, I was riding with a friend who was also having a bad day for him, and he looked at the tracker and he's like, you're going to be on the podium. I was like, what? No
That's
way.
amazing.
And we were actually at a gas station with like 4 other women. I was like, cool, well, this is an opportunity for me to just be efficient, keep going, because I actually feel
Yeah.
fine. Like I just can't go
Awesome.
fast.
Yeah, amazing.
And yeah, and so at that point I was able to increase my pace that second day and just continue to ride really steadily and efficiently, resupplying and just being quick with things. And then yeah, was with the girl, we were in 4th and 5th together, and I was able to ride away on a more technical section without like, and just got a gap naturally. And then I was like, well, this is an opportunity to just stay ahead. And so,
Wow.
and then apparently, and I think maybe if I was paying more attention to what was going on around me, things could have changed more. But apparently I was 2 minutes behind the person in third.
Oh my
But I had no
gosh.
idea. I
So
was just like
close.
out there, yeah,
Wow.
to do my best. And so I was like, because I did finish really strongly, and I finished in like 26 hours and 45 minutes, which was around the prior course record, which
Wow.
for the North. And so
Amazing.
yeah, the women's field was really fast, and I'm so impressed by all of them because they crushed it out there.
Yeah, what your
That's
entire
incredible.
podium was ahead of the old course record, right?
Either
Wow.
on around it or ahead of, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
We'll
incredible.
look at it again. But yeah,
Wow.
it was really cool.
Wow. Jeez. Well, congratulations. That's amazing. And
Thank
then
you.
what about you, Kurt? How did yours overall end up?
My race went well overall. Like I kind of blew
Mhm.
myself up a little bit early on. Same thing, like staying
Yeah.
with the lead group for a little longer than I should have probably, and more so just like not knowing what impact pushing that hard would have on
Mhm.
my body when I hadn't actually done any intensity in a month.
Right.
And so it took, I think I was with them for like 3 hours maybe, and then backed off a little bit, let them ride away. And then kind of took maybe 2 hours to refine my legs, and then was with a group of like 3 or 4 or 5 for a while, and then just with one guy for like 150 miles, and we just took turns rotating through most of most of the rest of the race. And then I snuck away from him with maybe 30 miles to go
Wow.
and came in, finished 9th, which I was really happy with. Finished in like
Amazing.
23 hours, which was again right around the old course record. And the
Wow.
entire, I think the whole top 10 in the men's field was like right around or ahead of the old course record. So it was a super
Jeez.
fast year. And for a style of racing that I'm just not that accustomed to, and that my body isn't used to like that style of like super continuous
Mhm.
pedaling for that long, I was really happy with how that worked. And my energy levels were really good. Nutrition plan worked out
That's great.
really well for that. Was able to stay on my goal of like, what was it, 110 grams of carbs an hour, or like
Amazing.
basically like 400 calories an hour, which is higher than I usually
Wow.
aim for. So that worked out really well for me. Had happy gut
Gosh.
the whole time.
Yeah. That's really incredible. I mean, just one placing that and then having rode over 1,000 miles just like the week before. That is insane. Wow. Well, amazing work, you guys. I know Kurt has to skedoodle in a second here, so I'm gonna be mindful of that, and we're gonna quickly go through your 2 6 LI. So we had that Kait was sprayed by a skunk while backpacking. She was attacked by a fox while bikepacking, and she has survived a polar bear attack. We were leaning towards the polar bear attack as a lie. Was that your lie?
Yes, however, that's a truth for Kurt, which I was really hoping he would use as one of his, because then you'd be like, well, which one of you?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. We're
But
gonna
he
have to have you
didn't
guys back
get
to
it.
hear that
Yeah.
story.
Yep, that's a whole other story.
Yeah.
Field work
Wow.
in the Arctic, and there were a lot of polar bears one season, and things got a little wild.
Wow. And you're alive to tell the story. That's
Fortunately, yeah.
Yes, yeah. Okay. And then we had Kurt, who once did a 100-mile running race just to see how hard it was. And that you got into endurance sports because of an article in Bicycle Magazine. And that you got Kait sprayed in the head by a skunk while bikepacking.
Yep. The spraying in the head by a skunk was the direct consequence of the polar bear attack, which left me very skittish of loud noises at night. And we were camped in a
I
wash.
don't see how a skunk could be loud, personally.
Okay. Well, for a little while after the encounter, it was any noises at night. Now it's just loud noises at night. But yeah, we were sleeping a few feet apart, and a skunk walked by, and I sat up very quickly, and it happened to spray Kait in the top of the head from like point blank range, and didn't get me at all.
Oh my gosh.
And
So
I
did you
woke
make
up
Kait
to
ride in the back?
Yep.
That's horrible.
That does sound horrible. So so that is true. So we said, what did we say? The magazine was the lie, Amanda?
Took a guess.
Yeah. Which one was it?
That one's actually true. That was when I was
Oh.
13. Saw a little article in Bicycling about, it was titled like, "You too can ride a century." And I was like, how do you ride 100 years? And then realized that a century is 100 miles. And was like, oh, maybe I should try that.
Amazing.
And so I did.
Wow.
And then what was the 100
running.
miles.
Yeah.
I did a 50-mile running race just to see
Wow.
what ultra running felt like compared
Wow.
to long mountain bike races. It was
Good
way
for
harder.
you. Yes, running is way harder, right?
It's
I
so much
agree.
harder on the body.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. Well,
And the gut.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, this has been so fantastic. I feel like I could have asked you a million more questions too about your fueling and hydration, all that fun stuff. But where can our
Yeah.
listeners find you, follow you? Where can they do all that stuff?
I'm on Instagram at kate.boyle. I have a YouTube channel where I try to share a lot of like how to and how I do things content
Amazing.
around like bike setups and packing and things like that. And I also have a newsletter that you can find on my website, I'm Kate, where I share more. So
Perfect. What about you,
Yep.
Kurt?
And then same Instagram, I'm Kurt.Refsnider. I assume that'll be in the show notes because people can't ever spell my last name. And to find out more about our team or like links to a lot of the how-to stuff, like articles and that sort of thing we write, you can go to backcountry-mtb.com. That's our team website, or my own website, and more about like my coaching, endurance coaching services and that sort of thing is ultramtb.net.
Awesome.
So lots of places to find out more about
Yes.
what we do, and we both try to share a lot of kind of educational how-to stuff. I mean, we're both educators by training, and so that's something we love to do.
It's amazing. Perfect. Well, we will link all that in the show notes for the listeners. And thank you guys again so much for joining us. This has been such a fun episode.
yeah, thank you. It was
Yeah,
really fun.
thanks.